Have you ever met someone who seems to control a room without even speaking? They don't shout, they don't explain, they simply withdraw, and everything shifts. Suddenly, the energy tightens. People lean in. Some grow nervous. Some chase after them. Some start questioning everything. That's the power of being unavailable. You see, the world is used to reacting. It's used to people who respond instantly, explain themselves constantly, and give themselves away without hesitation. So when you stop doing that, even slightly, you disrupt the pattern. And in that disruption, you reclaim something most people don't even know they've lost: your energy. Now imagine this. What would happen if you stopped reacting immediately to everything? If you chose silence over emotional outbursts, stillness over impulsive explanations, boundaries over availability? You wouldn't just change how others treat you. You'd change who you are. Because here's the truth. The more available you are to everyone all the time, the more you're being used. Maybe not maliciously, but energetically, emotionally, psychologically, you're being fed on. You think you're helping. You think you're keeping the peace. You think you're showing love. But what you're really doing is leaking energy. Every yes that should have been a no. Every reply you send when your body is screaming for rest. Every smile you fake to avoid confrontation. These are withdrawals from your internal bank account. And what do you have left at the end of the day? Tiredness, frustration, a strange emptiness you can't quite explain. That emptiness isn't just exhaustion, it's self-abandonment. Carl Jung once said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to a better understanding of ourselves." Now think about this in reverse. What does your own irritation, exhaustion, and overwhelm reveal about the way you've been trained to give yourself away? When you become emotionally inaccessible, not cold, just discerning, watch who gets uncomfortable, watch who tries to provoke you, watch who accuses you of changing. It's not because you became distant, it's because you're no longer easy to manipulate. People don't always chase love, they chase access. They chase emotional buttons they know how to push. When you remove those buttons, when you stop giving immediate, predictable emotional responses, you take away the game. And the people who only knew how to interact with your reactions, they begin to unravel. There's something quietly powerful about becoming a mystery, not in a game-playing, performative way, but as a side effect of reclaiming your energy. When you stop being emotionally available on demand, you're no longer a product others consume. You become a presence that commands respect without explanation. But here's the painful truth. Most people aren't taught how to do this. You were probably conditioned from a young age to be agreeable, polite, helpful, to say yes when you wanted to say no, to keep smiling even when something inside you screamed. You learned that being available was the path to love, that quick responses equals reliability, that constant presence equals worthiness. But no one told you the cost, because the cost is invisibility. The more you shape yourself for others, the less they see the real you. You become the helper, the rescuer, the peacemaker, but not the person with depth, needs, complexity. You become a role. And here's the irony. The more available you are, the more predictable you become. And what is predictable? It gets taken for granted. People don't value what they expect to always be there. They value what they feel honored to experience. You were not born to be a constantly open door. Your presence is not infinite. Your energy is not disposable. The moment you begin to treat your attention, time, and emotional space as sacred, you'll see how many people were never really showing up for you. They were showing up for the version of you that made their life easier. That realization hurts, but it's also the beginning of individuation, what Carl Jung described as the process of becoming whole, authentic, and psychologically free. And that process starts with a single choice: to protect your energy, not out of fear, but out of self-respect. This doesn't mean isolating yourself or becoming distant to everyone. It means moving with discernment, not obligation. Silence in this context is not emptiness. It's clarity. Withdrawal isn't weakness, it's strategy. And emotional unavailability, when chosen consciously, becomes a mirror. It reflects to others their own dependency on your reactivity. So, let me ask you, how long will you let your emotional strings be pulled by others? How long will you keep explaining yourself, justifying your needs, rushing a reply so you're not seen as selfish? How long will you live as a puppet, reacting every time someone pokes an old wound? Maybe it's time to cut the strings. Maybe it's time to withdraw, not as escape, but as transformation. To stop being the rescuer, the fixer, the emotional vending machine, to become the mystery, the calm in the storm, the person who says little but radiates presence. Because when you stop being available, everything changes. And the change doesn't begin with others, it begins with you. So pause, breathe, pull your energy back from everyone who hasn't earned it. Because you're not here to be consumed, you're here to become whole. Not to fragment yourself across the expectations of others, not to chase approval, not to drain yourself for the illusion of being loved. And yet, that's what many of us are doing. Always answering, always explaining, always giving. Because we're afraid of what might happen if we stop. But let's pause and ask the deeper question. Why do we feel such a strong pull to react, to respond, to be available all the time? Why do we give so much of ourselves, emotionally, mentally, even spiritually, until we're left empty? The answer lies in a concept that Carl Jung called psychic energy. He didn't see the mind as a neutral machine, simply responding to the world around it. He saw it as an energy system. Every thought you think, every emotion you feel, every decision you make uses energy. And unlike your phone or your car, you can't always see when you're running low. But your body knows. You feel it as heaviness, as anxiety, as that strange emotional fatigue that no amount of sleep can fix. You wake up tired. You overthink a comment someone made yesterday. You replay a moment you didn't handle perfectly, again and again and again. These aren't just random habits, they're leaks. Tiny emotional punctures where your psychic energy is bleeding out. Every time you jump to defend yourself against an unworthy criticism, every time you respond to a message you didn't have the energy for, every time you say yes when you meant no, you give away another drop of your life force. And the people who get those drops? Most of them don't even realize the cost. Because the truth is, many people don't actually want you. They want what you provide. Your validation, your presence, your emotional labor, your ability to absorb their chaos so they don't have to feel it. And this creates an invisible pattern, one that you may have been stuck in for years. You respond instantly because you don't want to seem distant. You explain yourself because you're afraid of being misunderstood. You try to manage how others feel, because deep down you think their discomfort is your fault. That's not love. That's emotional servitude. You don't owe the world your constant accessibility. You don't owe everyone an explanation for your silence. And you definitely don't owe anyone your energy if you leave every interaction feeling worse than before. So what happens when you start to pull back? When you stop reacting, stop explaining, stop showing up the second someone snaps their fingers. At first, it may feel uncomfortable, even unnatural, because you've been trained to believe that emotional availability equals goodness. That being quick to help, quick to reply, quick to please is a virtue. But it's not always virtue. Sometimes it's a wound wearing a mask, a fear of rejection, a fear of being abandoned, a fear that if you aren't always useful, you won't be loved. And here's the most painful part. The more available you are, the more you blend into the background. People start to assume you'll always be there. And the moment you stop, they call you selfish, distant, cold. Not because you are, but because you're no longer easy to consume. You've gone from being a resource to being a person. And some people don't know how to handle that. But you must protect your energy, even when it's misunderstood. Carl Jung once said that a healthy psyche is one that knows how to keep energy within the system. That means learning how to say no without guilt, how to rest without explaining, how to observe without jumping in to fix. It means learning to sit in silence while others squirm, to hold your center while others poke at it. Because your energy is not infinite. And when you finally realize how limited it is, you start to spend it with intention. You begin to ask, does this conversation nourish me? Does this person drain or support me? Do I feel clearer or more scattered after giving my attention here? This isn't selfishness, it's emotional maturity. You're not rejecting people, you're simply choosing where your energy flows. And here's where it gets powerful. When you learn to hold that energy, when you stop giving it away so easily, you develop something rare. Presence, not noise, not attention-seeking, just the kind of presence that speaks even in silence. You walk into a room and people notice, without knowing why. You speak less, but your words carry weight. You don't need to explain yourself, because your energy explains you. But here's the key. That kind of presence can only come from boundaries. And boundaries don't always look like rules. Sometimes they're just inner decisions no one else sees. I won't rush to respond just because someone expects me to. I won't justify my rest. I won't over-explain my no. These micro-decisions, these subtle shifts in how you protect your energy, are how you slowly step out of the role of emotional caretaker and into the role of self-aligned human being. It's not about being cold, it's about being clear. It's not about pushing people away, it's about inviting only the right ones in. Because when you reclaim your psychic energy, you stop orbiting other people's needs and begin revolving around your own truth. Porting centerers. When our people will like this, if you want to set a longer for the people, and from that center, everything changes. You no longer feel pressure to respond right away. You no longer carry guilt for taking space. You no longer contort yourself to be liked. You become still. You become steady. You become selective. And when you become selective, you become powerful. So take a breath. Notice how much of your energy is spent on being accessible and ask yourself, what if I stopped giving that away for free? What if you could walk through the world untethered by the pull to be everything for everyone? What if your value didn't come from how much you gave, but from how deeply you honored your own limits? That is the shift, from emotional currency to emotional sovereignty. And in the next part, we'll go deeper into how this new energy threatens those who've relied on your emotional availability, and why, when you go quiet, manipulation begins to fall apart. Because your silence is not an absence, it's a mirror, and not everyone is ready to see what it reflects. Because when you go quiet, you stop playing a role. You stop feeding the illusion others have built around you, and that illusion was never really about you. It was about their needs, their insecurities, their projections. When you were always available, you made it easy for others to avoid themselves. They didn't need to look inward because you were always there, to soothe, to explain, to fix. But the moment you step back, the silence begins to echo, and that echo reveals everything they were trying to avoid. You were their distraction from their own emptiness, their buffer against discomfort. So when you disappear, even momentarily, it doesn't just feel like loss, it feels like collapse. And some won't take that well, because they weren't relating to you as a whole person. They were relating to the version of you that served their story, and when you stop serving that story, they'll say you've changed. They'll say you're distant, difficult, selfish. But what they really mean is, you're no longer playing the part I wrote for you. This is the danger of always being available. People stop seeing you, they only see what you provide. And this is why your silence feels threatening to them, because now, without your reactions, they have to face themselves. They have to feel the fear they've been dumping onto you. They have to sit with the anxiety they used to hand off. Carl Jung said, "We do not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." And nothing brings darkness into the light faster than a boundary. When you stop reacting, the shadow surfaces. Not just theirs, but yours too. Because this isn't just about them, it's about you. It's about your own fear of being misunderstood, your own desire to keep the peace, your own temptation to step back into the role just to avoid discomfort. Because when you stop over-explaining, people might walk away. When you stop pleasing, they might criticize. When you start protecting your energy, you might be called cold. And that's the moment of choice. Will you betray yourself to keep their comfort intact, or will you allow the discomfort to purify what no longer belongs? Because silence isn't just a boundary, it's a filter. It reveals who respects your energy and who resents it, who shows up anyway, and who disappears when they can't control you. And what remains after that? Clarity. It's quiet at first, a little lonely even, but eventually that quiet turns into something sacred. Stillness. In stillness, you meet the parts of yourself you've neglected. You begin to feel again, not for others, but for yourself. You begin to hear your own voice beneath all the noise you used to respond to, and it tells you something you've forgotten. You are not here to be defined by your reactions. You are not here to carry emotional weight that isn't yours. You are here to live aligned, not to explain your boundaries, but to embody them. Not to perform your worth, but to honor it. This is where your real power begins. When your energy is your own again, you move through life with a different gravity. You don't chase, you don't beg, you don't overgive. You simply exist, present, whole, and grounded. And people will feel that. Not everyone will like it. Some will try to test it, some will try to pull you back into the role, but by then you'll recognize it for what it is, a return invitation to the very thing you've outgrown, and you'll say no. Not with anger, not with justification, just with clarity, because that's what self-respect sounds like. It's not loud, it doesn't explain itself, it just is. So let the silence speak. Let your withdrawal reset the field. You don't need to prove your worth by how much you can endure. You don't need to be accessible to be valuable. You are not here to serve roles. You are here to serve truth. And when you live from that place, those who are meant for you will feel it. They'll meet you in your stillness, not to consume you, but to stand beside you. No masks, no roles, no performance, just presence. And that changes everything. Because when you stop being available, you don't just protect your energy, you reclaim your life. And don't forget, keep watching the next video. It's important, much more than you imagine. See you there.